Hello, online pipe community. Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here. Today we've got another morsel for mental manducation. But first, another Briar Lee Goodfellow, this time a smooth example. I have got some Esoterica Stonehaven. Not bad. Today, while my stupid puppy barks in the background, I want to talk about originalism, specifically as it relates to the U.S. Constitution. See, there are many folks out there who would like us to believe that the Constitution is a living document, that it should be reinterpreted, reimagined as society changes and advances. Well, the Constitution was intended to be read and acted upon with the meaning, the original intent of the authors, and the context in mind. That's what's called originalism. How do we know this? Well, because the Constitution contains within itself a mechanism for changing it if you don't like it, for amending the Constitution. So there's a mechanism for changing it, which means it's not supposed to be changed unless you use that mechanism. Now, the process for amending the Constitution is kind of complicated and difficult. You have to have either 3/4 of both houses of the federal legislature agree that a proposed amendment needs to be made, or you have to have 3/4 of the state legislatures petition Congress for a constitutional convention where amendments will be proposed. Then, that's 2/3. Then 3/4 of the state legislatures have to approve of the amendments, or 3/4 of state conventions, whichever Congress chooses, have to agree. So 2/3 to get the amendment proposed, 3/4 to get the amendment ratified. Not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. The document was very well written as it was, and changing it was supposed to be difficult. It had very specific meaning, and should still today. This comes in nice flakes. I don't dry them out, so it takes a few relights to really get it going. A couple examples of why we need to think about and always follow the original intent of the authors. Recently, as anyone who hasn't been living under a rock knows, Roe v. Wade, which didn't just make abortion legal in the U.S., it required abortion to be legal in all 50 states in the U.S., was overturned. Well, it was overturned because the original decision was a bad decision, legally speaking and constitutionally speaking. Who said that? None other than former Supreme Court Justice, the liberal lioness herself, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now, she was a supporter of abortion rights, and she agreed with the consequences of the decision in Roe v. Wade. But she herself said that it was poor law, that the decision created a right out of thin air where none actually existed in the Constitution. That is what amendments are for. If you want abortion to be a federally protected right, then you need to amend the Constitution to make that a right. It's not there as it is. And even RGB, I've been doing color correction too long. Even RBG, as she is often called, agreed with that. It was bad law. Now, what happens when the Constitution just means whatever we want it to mean based on societal whims or what the court feels like today? Exactly what happened here. A future court can come back and just say, well, that was bad law. This is not a matter of just standing on stare decisis, the concept that previous rulings have to stand. That has never been true in the United States. Previous rulings have very frequently been overruled. Dred Scott. There are all kinds of decisions that have been bad law that were then later overturned. And should have been overturned. They should not have been left as bad law. And Roe v. Wade is one of those. But if you don't have a good argument for something that comes directly from the Constitution itself, then it's very easy for a future court to take away something that you've created out of thin air. Second example, in another recent court case, the Supreme Court ruled that Congress, that actually even state governments, because this applies to the states as well, cannot ban weapons that are in common use. Why is this important right now? Well, the House just passed an assault weapons ban. Never mind the fact that real assault weapons, while legal, are virtually impossible to get. They're very difficult to get. You have to go through all kinds of hoops and expenses in order to own one. And certain ones, they can't have been manufactured after, I forget, 1979 anyway. So there aren't any new assault weapons on the market. They're decades old, and it's almost impossible for an average citizen to get one. You cannot just go into a gun store and get an assault weapon. You can, however, get a semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15, an AK-47, any variant of that. And for the non-gunners out there, when somebody says AK-47, no, they do not mean an actual AK-47. They mean a semi-automatic clone that is patterned on the AK-47. Still only shoots one bullet for each trigger pull. Anyway, that's off into the weeds. Why is that important? Well, because this law would ban the manufacture, trade, sale, etc. of these weapons. Well, the problem with that is that over the last couple of decades, as hunting has declined in most areas, the most common rifle platform being purchased in the United States today is the AR-15. It is a weapon in common use. You can't ban them. The Supreme Court just ruled that. Democrats in Congress don't care. They're going to lose, if this makes it through the Senate, they will lose the very first lawsuit that comes against the law, because it will come against the same Supreme Court that just made that ruling. It's political theater. But that ruling, in my opinion, didn't go far enough in terms of originalism. Why? Let's read the Second Amendment, see what it actually says. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment isn't about hunting. The Second Amendment isn't even about personal self-defense, as valuable and important as that is. The Second Amendment is all about maintaining a free state. Keep in mind here, the word state here does not mean state lowercase s as in any government. It means state as in one of the individual states. Regulated does not, in the context in which it was written, and this is why it's important to read things and understand things in the context in which they are written. The word regulated did not mean having rules and regulations applied to it. No. If you actually read what was being said about the militia and military at the time, in that context, the word regulated meant well-armed and supplied. Sometimes trained as well, but not bound by rules or regulations. Well, this same set of men who created the Constitution had just shepherded the country a decade earlier. Through a revolution, overthrowing the existing government at the time. They understood the possibility of the government becoming tyrannical. The Second Amendment is an anti-tyranny amendment. It's not a personal hunting or even a personal safety amendment. It's there because who were the militia? Well, in these men's minds, the militia were every able-bodied man who was willing to fight. Everyone. Not just some certain subset of them who were authorized by the government. Every male. And where did their weapons come from? For most of the Revolutionary War, most of the weapons were personally owned. Yes, there were infusions of arms and ammunition, lead, gunpowder, that sort of thing, later on. But for the bulk of the war, those arms were personally owned. The individual was able to own arms that were powerful enough to overthrow his own government. This is what the Second Amendment is about. The Second Amendment is about the government being afraid of the people, not the other way around. So in my opinion, the court didn't go quite far enough when they said that people, or that governments can't ban weapons that are in common use. Well, the Constitution very directly implies that governments should not be able to ban weapons that the government has. Because in many cases, our militiamen had better weapons, including rifles instead of muskets, than the redcoats did. Better weapons than the government had. Let that sink in. This is the context in which the Second Amendment was written. It's important that we keep in mind the original intent. Now, understood, you may disagree with the consequences of decisions like this that go back to the Constitution and actually rule based on what the Constitution says. Yes, you may not like that. You may think that's outdated. We don't need it anymore. Well, the Constitution contains within it the mechanism by which you can change what the Constitution provides for. You just have to convince enough other Americans that you're right. Yeah, that's difficult. It's intentionally difficult. It's difficult so that we preserve the freedoms that we have for future generations. With that, folks, light something you like. Enjoy a steamy, if pretty, afternoon.